people that were specialists in a particular discipline, in this case the Masons.
Like stone builders?
Yeah, were called Freemasons because rather than being slaves, which not so much here, but in Roman times and so on, did a lot of where you go back to the pyramids. They're built by slaves, right? The design, kind of the engineering, the stonework, was all, the specifications were set by quote unquote Freemasons. These were people that had a specialty in the discipline, but weren't slaves. It's almost like a professional association, the Association of Engineers. We call it today doctors. They're called MDs. I mean, you had to know what you were doing to cut a stone.
Yeah, and the capstone especially, all that weight bearing.
And so their quote-unquote professional association was referred to as Freemasons.
So James, Bowie, and all these, they in turn like knew how to build buildings and architecture?
Honoring these Masons, quote-unquote. I mean, in this case, you've got Bowie, and you've heard of the Bowie knife.
Yes.
You got Crockett. Now, Crockett wasn't just the thing that you and I grew up with Walt Disney and Daniel Boone and David Crockett. He was also
a historical
He was
figure.
a U.S. senator.
Oh, really?
At one point. Either that or congressman, I forget which. Dickinson, I don't recall. Barrett Travis his background was British. These were the quote-unquote kind of the big names that gave their lives here.
So then Masonry is a mix of like politics, kind of the elite, I guess it would be. Because back in those pyramid days, like to build those pyramids based on like the astrological lineup that they have, you would have had to know some kind of like higher knowledge to like build that.
Exactly. You would have had to have essentially an engineering degree that was at the doctorate level. If you ever look at a Freemason's ring or a Shriner's ring,
the actual finger ring.
Yeah, you will see in the center of the ring they have what basically is a trigonomic instrument that draws a perfect circle.
Yeah, that thing right there.
Exactly. And what it is a representation of the discipline. Now, like any other discipline, you've heard rock stars and yada yada get an honorary degree. These guys got honorary degrees.
So when you say like degrees, how many degrees are there per se?
Well, and I'm no expert on the Freemason side, but I know they have a multitude of levels of degrees. Now you take, for example, if I can draw you a parallel, and medicine or engineering is not that good. If you look at a jeweler and you find somebody that can do work like that he doesn't consider himself a jeweler. He considers himself...
Wait, is that an eye inside of a pyramid?
Actually, no. What it is I used to be a cop, and it's the jurisdictional coat of arms of the jurisdiction.
Of Canada, or were you a cop here?
Yeah, no, I was a cop in Canada, in Calgary. And this guy is not
He's
really
been
a
doing
jeweler.
it for a while.
He's an artist, and he's also a certified metallurgist. So he can deal with diamonds, he can deal with gold, he can deal with different metals, so on and so forth, and build jewelry. They don't, with a ring like that, he built it specifically to my specifications. It's a one-of-a-kind ring. And he didn't charge me on the basis of any kind of retail price. He charged me on the basis of the number of hours he put into creating the ring.
Definitely.
The reality is that price is far, far less than, walking in and trying to buy what essentially
is a generic, just a piece of shit.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this one is unique. The mold was done and then destroyed.
Wow.
But still, because I supplied the rocks and the metal, because of his guild association or association like the Freemasons, then he charged on a certain set rate.
Yeah.
So it's very much, like I say, in very simplistic terms, you can say it's similar to a union. It goes a lot farther than that because there's generally
2,000 years of history.
There's a
a
tremendous
lot going
history
a lot farther,
behind what's called a guild.
Yeah.
And you'll find gemologists, people that deal with diamonds and precious gems. They also go that route. They don't have an association per se. It's a guild. And this goes back, the origins of it goes back to pre-Christ times, to BC times. So there's a whole history involved.
No, yeah, I actually know more about it than I let on it. I just like to ask people what they think about it, just because to get their reactions, you know, because a lot of people don't really know like what it is, because they see this benevolent like fraternal order on the outside, like the first four degrees.
These people were not benevolent.
Oh yeah, no.
But I don't say that in a negative way.
No, definitely.
I mean, as a historian, when you consider the fact that this goes back 5,000 years historically.
Well, I mean, based on me, but this itself doesn't. But I mean, it's just based on the old Kabbalistic, the study of the light, basically, Luciferian philosophy. And I think it's, you know, it's pretty interesting. It's also pretty weird at the same time that you go to buildings like this where wars have been fought, and yet again, here's the stamp of the Masons.
Yeah.
Like, always hand in hand.
Oh yeah. I mean, it so much of our history in North America is derived from Europe.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to recognize that history is derived from Italy, or the Roman Empire, and Greece. It's not a combination of the two. It's distinctly separate periods, each that contributed a unique platform upon which, I mean, what frustrates me is the vast majority of people around us today don't know horseshit about where they came from.
Oh, exactly.
You know, I'm Irish, Scots, English. Biggie do. But that has a whole history going right back to whether you want to analyze 9/11 and what the big deal is between Islam and the West. You have to go back to the origins of Greek philosophy as it influenced the West, channel that into Christian philosophy, and at the same time move that not just into Islam, because Islam was 600 AD that it originated, but go right back to the story of Abraham and Ishmael, his son.
Do you see that, like, even how Christianity is based, like, on Hebrew, just going to religion in Hebrew, it's just basically all going back to the...
Christianity as we know it...
Well, not based on it, but I'm just talking about, like, the fundamental stories and truths that are contained within their scriptures.
The fundamental structure is based on Greek philosophy. But if you look at the culture of Judea in the time of Christ, during the Roman occupation and before, you'll find that that's an Eastern religion, and it was at that point very mystical. Well, Greek philosophy, by its very nature, is not mystical. It's based on logic.
Definitely.
And anytime you take logic and move it into the intrinsic realm, you get all sorts of... Eastern mysticism doesn't have that chain of logic.
It's very non-linear.
It's much more free think, wide open.
Definitely.
Two very different points on the pole.
Yeah, each they make their valid points.
Yeah. So where I by nature am a sequential logical thinker, I also have to recognize the fact that there is an equal and valid free think mechanism over there, that while I have tremendous difficulty understanding it, I can't dispute its validity.
Mm-hmm.
With Eastern mysticism, it just is. And it's an accepted part of the universe.
The being, that's what it is. It's simple like that, though, too.
One of the problems is our Western culture tends to want to get to the point where everybody agrees. We compromise until the point we all agree. I wouldn't dress this way.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me fucking nuts. But understand, I grew up in the late 60s. My whole thing was rebellion.
Yeah, definitely.
And yet, when I see this and the MTV thing, I'm going, whoa, I don't want that shit. Don't bring it close to me.
Yeah.
But what we don't understand in Western philosophy is we have to agree to disagree. If we're going to have harmony between people, we have to agree to disagree, which means I can say to you, I don't particularly care to dress that way, but you know what? That's okay. You dress how you want.
For sure. We can still come here and have this conversation.
And how many people do you know at 51 years of age are prepared to give you that?
Not many,
it's not a question of give. It's a question of recognizing, by definition, in the 60s, when my generation fought for the right to be what we are, we must, by definition, allow other people to be what they are. And yet, the culture we live in makes that damn near impossible. You know, and it's just, and it's tossed off as human nature. Well, I'd argue to you, no, it's not human nature. It's not human nature at all. Human nature, by definition, says, let's all get in the same sandbox and agree to play. Well, if you're going to do that...
I would agree. I would disagree on that.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if you're going to have that objective, then you have a responsibility to say, okay, how you choose to dress is your thing. If we can connect in a discussion about a historical thing that leaves us both saying, hey, that was a good deal, then that's okay, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that also implies, you know, I tend to be a redneck cowboy motherfucker, but that's okay too, as long as I'm not sticking in your face that you have to be a redneck cowboy motherfucker. And why do I say that? Because my experience at 51, you're at what, 22, 23?
21, yeah.
This is 5,000 years old. What gives us the arrogance to think that our particular perspective is complete? When you have 5,000 years of history, this symbol right here. Do you know what this goes back to?
It goes back to the pyramid with the sun over it.
Solomon's Mines. Solomon's Mines is where the guild first started.
Are you affiliated with the Masons?
No, I'm not. I was asked, and for no particular reason other than the fact I'm a lazy son of a bitch, I didn't do it.
Did you come in a lot of contact, like as an officer?
No, I'm a historian. I when I went through school, I took theology, a little bit of philosophy, but more theology and predominantly history. But what made me more curious is how, because in North America we're incredibly arrogant, but at the same time, why is it we live in a situation that now we talk about, we talk about the thing with Islam, so on and so forth. Is the battle with Islam? No, the battle is with fundamentalist Islam. Why is it so critical? Because, if you don't mind, thank you. Fundamentalist Islam simply will not accept what we in the West consider, albeit imperfectly, the freedom of the individual to be free.
Why did they load that though? On like as a fundamentalist view, why can't the person be free, like individually?
I'll draw a parallel here for what it's worth. In very simplistic terms, Christianity says that what you do isn't the issue. It's not to say it doesn't matter. What it says is it isn't the issue. The issue for salvation is acceptance of Christ as the Son of God who died on the cross. And if you accept that as a fact, not necessarily a physical fact, but a fact in terms of the larger deal, then you have salvation. Islam, on the other hand, accepts, and it is derived from Judaism, which Christianity is also derived from. The history is the same, or from the same origins. Islam says that if you do certain things, you will reach glory.
Like the degrees.
Yeah. So in other words, if the imam or the religious leader calls for a jihad or a war against whatever, and you are a martyr in that war, you will reach heaven. Christianity, on the other hand, says what you do is not the issue, may be important, but it's not the issue. Acceptance of Christ as the Son of God gets you into heaven. So that means that on the Christian side, we can fuck up, as long as we recognize we're fucking up and try and do something about it, we can get to heaven. Islam, on the other hand, that's not the issue. Is it a theological valid argument? Let's leave that to the theologians. Now, if you were raised in a culture that gave you no information other than the fact that North America was Satan incarnate, and that if the ultimate sacrifice for your belief, for your faith, for your God, and oddly enough, theologically, we share the same God. If your salvation is based on destruction of the great Satan, then there really isn't a lot of question, is there?
No. But
faith has been used as a incredible excuse for centuries, for millennia. I mean, we look at Islam right now and say, they're off the wall. It was the Christians that invented the Crusades. It was the Christians that invented the Great Inquisition. It was the Christians that invented the religious destruction of South America up through Mexico and all the rest of it. It was the Christians that invented this shit. Are we pure? Is it religious? No. I think it's part of it has to do with the fact that I employ technology that allows me to wander around and do this, and yet I can sit down in my car when we're traveling over to Miami and I can be in touch with my business. I have cell phones, I have a computer, I have this, that, and the other thing. I'm not restricted in any way, shape, or form to a specific location. We have wealth. We have wealth beyond imagination. Our technology has made humanity a joke.
Cameras.
You have history in the making right there. Thank you very much on a computer chip. They have sticks and stones with which to make fire. Is it surprising they're jealous?
No, not at all, but
having had a look at what the alternatives are, then do something about it. But don't blame the alternatives for existing. Is our alternative perfect? Fuck no. You and I both know that. How many times can you have a conversation with a man my age that has any kind of common sense at all?
Bullshit. Aesthetics.
How many times... I have sons about your age, so I mean, I'm not completely out in the dark in terms of where you are. But we live in a society that is utterly, completely self-centered. Here's the weakness of the Freemasons and the reason. I was a cop for 7 years when I was a baby, when I was your age. Taught me a lot about life. But one of the problems I have with the clubs, I've always really worked my ass to think on my own. Now, when I was your age and even into my 30s, it was, I'm in your face because I'll make my own decision, thank you very much. Fortunately, over a period of time and with evolution of experience and thought, I'm comfortable being what I am. And that's the secret. I think everybody aspires to getting comfortable with who they are without having to stick it in other people's face. I mean, you can be comfortable with who you are quietly without having to kick the shit out of everybody. Having said that, you also got to be able to draw a line in the sand. But in our culture, you as an individual, I as an individual have intrinsic individual worth. He may have the power, he may have the authority, he may have the intelligence, experience, and everything else. But my question is why? Not so much from a challenge, but tell me why. I'd like to see some logic in what I do.
Yeah.
And if you can't tell me why, and I mean, even in North America, I mean, I think that's part of the human dynamic. Do what I tell you to do. Yeah, well, why? Well, if I'm going to tell you what to do, and you say, well, why? I'm going to give you a reason. And I'll tell you the reason. The choice is yours. How you accept that, how you analyze it, and what judgments you make upon that. But at least I will tell you why. And if I rebelled, and I will continue to rebel against the establishment until they give me a dirt nap, all I'm asking is, tell me why. I'm not a fool. If you tell me why, and makes sense, it's logical, I can understand it, then I can accept that position. But if you can't tell me why, all you're doing is stroking your dick. It's a power play. And I won't buy into that.
No, definitely. But unfortunately, everybody else will.
Yeah, no shit. Exactly.
You know, you watch that motherfucker on TV, and he's just, I don't know, you know. It's like if he says one thing enough, and it's just in your head, they'll just believe it, and they do. And then it's just like nobody thinks to ask why, or if they do.
A couple of minutes?
Sure.
Well, my advice to my boys is, look, learn. Don't learn because I say learn. Learn because if you ever stop asking why, if you're going to ask why, there's two things that are important. Number one, listen to the answer. But number two, and this comes from the police/legal background, corroborate the answer. In other words, go to some different sources.
Yeah, that's the key, I think.
And if you get this, if you get the full picture, then you can make up in your own mind that, all right, I'll go that direction because I understand it and it makes sense. In other words, never, ever, ever, ever hesitate to ask why. And a good indicator of people being full of shit is when you do ask why, is you get a negative reaction. Now, I will also, because I'm a cynic, argue that 90% of the people in North America aren't interested in learning. And that's their loss. That's their weakness. As much as my generation likes to say, look, we invented rebellion. Well, actually, we didn't. So, we rebelled against the status quo and the establishment, blah, 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 blah. One of the things we forgot, or didn't know at the time, and have subsequently not addressed, my generation, is that if you're going to reject what is, then you're fucking responsible for filling in that gap with something better. Simple basic courtesy says, I don't give a shit if you got dreadlocks. If you're civil to me, I'm going to be civil to you. You know, why, because I'm bald and you got dreadlocks, why is it we should yap at each other? What's the upside to that? Where's the advantage? There isn't any. And yet our whole society is based on that. And it's bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
Because it weakens us. My generation forgot that if we were going to change something, we have a responsibility. Every individual has a responsibility to legitimately explain what we've put in its place. If you're going to ask a question, have the fucking courtesy to at least listen to the answer instead of making the judgment by virtue of the question. And oddly enough, I mean, being a history buff, if you go back 3,000 years and read Plato's work in the Republic and some of his other works, he makes a very clear statement that the youth generation of his time was a waste of skin. This hasn't changed in 5,000 years. It will never change. Your kids will make you fucking bananas. And it's not that they're rebelling. They just want their own identity. And it's not easy on either side, but it goes back to that point that I made. Within limits, you have to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And that is not part of our culture, which is one of the reasons that you have such a fuck up.